How to boost your critical thinking skills. Improve your critical thinking skills. Have you ever paused and really asked yourself, are the choices I make actually mine? Or am I just reacting out of habit without even noticing? Most of us go through life on autopilot. We make decisions at work, in relationships, and with money, but how often do we think about how we think? This video is a deep dive into critical thinking, logic, and problem solving by Big Rocks Thinking, a book that pulls back the curtain on the mental shortcuts, biases, and thinking errors we all fall into. But more importantly, it gives you the tools to break free. In the next 30 minutes, I'll walk you through the best ideas from the book, how to spot bad logic, ask better questions, and solve problems like a pro. Let's start by rethinking how we think. Let's break it down. What is critical thinking, really? Instead of it being critical of others or always pointing out flaws, it's about being aware of how you think and making sure your thoughts actually make sense. It's the ability to look at a problem, a conversation, or a decision and not just react, but analyze it, question it, and then respond with purpose. At its core, critical thinking is about slowing down your thoughts just enough to ask, is this true? Does this follow? Am I missing something? Why does this matter in everyday life? Because whether we realize it or not, we're constantly making judgments. A news headline, a coworker's feedback, a decision about spending money or setting goals. If you don't have the tools to step back and evaluate information clearly, you're more likely to fall into mental traps, assumptions, bad logic, emotional snap reactions. Now let's talk about the 3 core traits that make a good critical thinker. First up is curiosity. This is the part of you that doesn't just accept the first answer. It's the voice in your head that says, wait, why is it that way? Curious people dig deeper. They don't stop at surface level explanations. They want to know more, not to show off, but to understand better. Then there's skepticism. Not the cynical kind, but healthy skepticism. It means you don't just believe something because someone said it confidently or it was on a flashy graphic. You pause, you ask, where's the evidence? You check the facts before you buy into the conclusion. And lastly, humility. This one's big. It's the ability to say, I might be wrong. Critical thinkers know that being wrong doesn't mean you're stupid. It means you're learning. Humility keeps you open to new information and protects you from arrogance, which shuts learning down. Let's put this in real life context. Picture a triage nurse in an emergency room. People are coming in with injuries, some minor, some life-threatening. That nurse has to decide quickly and calmly who needs help first. That's critical thinking in action, assessing facts fast, separating what matters from what doesn't, and staying focused under pressure. Now think about a lawyer prepping for court. They can't just go with gut feelings. They have to examine evidence, spot weak arguments, anticipate counterpoints, and build a case that holds up. That's analysis. That's logic. That's critical thinking. Even a store manager uses it. Imagine customer complaints are piling up. A reactive manager might panic, but a critical thinker? They'll look at patterns, dig into data, ask the right questions, and come up with a real solution instead of a Band-Aid fix. So what's in it for you? What are the actual benefits of thinking critically? You'll make better decisions, fewer regrets, more confidence. You'll communicate more clearly because you'll know how to get to the point and back it up. You'll become more emotionally intelligent because you'll pause and process instead of just reacting. And honestly, you'll be harder to manipulate. Ads, social media, gossip, clickbait, they'll have a tougher time messing with your head when you can think your way through them. Bottom line, critical thinking is not just for scholars or leaders. It's a survival skill for everyday life. So before we jump into the tools and tactics, just ask yourself, am I really thinking or just reacting? If it's the second one, don't worry. That's what this journey is for. If thinking clearly is so important, why don't more people do it? Simple answer, because it's hard. Not impossible, just not automatic. Our minds like shortcuts. We rely on habits, emotions, and assumptions more than we realize. And that's where the real challenge begins. Barriers to critical thinking. Let's look at the most common ones and how they mess with us in everyday life. First up is egocentrism, thinking the world revolves around your own views. It's that inner voice that says, I must be right because I'm me. When you believe your perspective is the only valid one, you stop listening, you shut down new ideas, and over time, you stay stuck. Egocentrism can show up in small things like refusing to take feedback, or in big things like pushing your opinion in meetings while ignoring better suggestions. Then there's groupthink. This one's sneaky. It's the pressure to go along with the crowd, even when the crowd might be wrong. Maybe you've been in a meeting where everyone agrees with the boss just to keep things smooth, or in a friend group where no one questions the cool opinion. Groupthink kills originality. It makes people silence themselves to fit in. And that's dangerous because progress comes from people who think for themselves. Stress is another big one. When you're overwhelmed, your brain goes into survival mode. You're not thinking critically. You're just trying to get through the day. Under pressure, we tend to rush decisions, avoid tough questions, and fall back on emotion instead of logic. Ever snapped at someone or made a choice you regretted just because you were tired and under pressure? That's stress blocking your ability to think straight. Now let's talk about the silent killer, laziness. Not the kind where you lie on the couch after a long week. That's rest. I'm talking about mental laziness. The I don't feel like thinking this through kind of attitude. It's when we settle for the easy answer, skim instead of study, or scroll instead of reflect. It feels harmless, but over time, it keeps us from growing. And here's the thing, these barriers are not rare. They're common. We all fall into them. A team that doesn't challenge bad ideas ends up wasting time and money. A leader who's too proud to admit mistakes loses trust. A person who avoids thinking through decisions ends up living reactively, not intentionally. Let me give you a real life picture. Imagine a company launching a new product. The idea sounds flashy, and everyone nods in agreement during meetings. No one wants to challenge it. That's groupthink. The boss pushes forward, even though some early data shows problems, but she ignores it because she's convinced she knows best. That's egocentrism. The launch is rushed because the team's under a tight deadline. Everyone's tired and stressed. That's stress. And no one digs into the market research or asks the tough questions. That's laziness. What happens? The product flops, sales tank, people point fingers, and it could have been avoided. So what's the fix? It starts with awareness. You can't fight what you don't see. But once you recognize these patterns, when your pride flares up, when you're just nodding to blend in, when you're rushing or zoning out, that's your signal. Pause, take a breath, ask yourself, am I actually thinking right now, or am I just reacting? You don't have to be perfect, just be awake, because the better you get at noticing these mental traps, the easier it becomes to escape them. And when you do, you'll start making smarter choices, not just faster ones. That's the real win. Okay, so what makes someone a good critical thinker? It's not about being the smartest in the room. It's about having the right habits of mind. Here are 10 skills that can seriously sharpen the way you think, solve problems, and make decisions. First is identification, being able to recognize the issue or situation clearly. A lot of confusion comes from not knowing what the actual problem is. If your team's falling behind on a project, is the issue time management, unclear roles, or too much workload? You can't fix what you can't name. Next is inference. That's drawing conclusions based on the info you have, not guessing reasoning. Let's say sales dropped last month. Inference means looking at the data, customer behavior, maybe even season trends, and figuring out why, not just reacting to the numbers. Bias detection is a big one. We all have blind spots. Sometimes we like certain answers because they match what we already believe, but real thinkers check themselves. Am I being fair? Am I looking at all sides? This matters in everything from hiring decisions to watching the news. Then there's relevance, knowing what actually matters. If you're in a meeting and someone brings up 5 different stats, a critical thinker can separate the useful stuff from the noise. Focus is a superpower. Creativity plays a part too. Critical thinking isn't just logic, it's also coming up with new angles, solutions, and questions that others might miss. It helps you break out of routine thinking and explore smarter options. And of course, open-mindedness. You've got to be okay with being challenged. If you shut down when someone disagrees with you, you're not growing. But if you listen and still hold your ground or change your mind based on better reasoning, you're thinking at a high level. Now, how does this play out in real life? Imagine you're reading a news article. You start by identifying what it's about. You look for facts, not just opinions. You check the source. Is it credible? You ask yourself, does this make sense? What's missing? That's critical thinking in action. Or say there's a disagreement at work. Instead of reacting emotionally, you step back, ask questions, listen, and weigh the options before responding. That's what separates clear thinkers from reactive ones. These skills aren't fancy, they're practical, and anyone can develop them. Thinking better isn't just about being sharp. It's also about having the right tools. Even the smartest people can get stuck if they don't have a clear process to work through a problem. That's where frameworks come in. They don't think for you, but they help you think better. Let's start with the Paul Elder critical thinking model. This model breaks thinking into parts, what they call the elements of thought, stuff like purpose, assumptions, point of view, evidence, and conclusions. It helps you slow down and ask, what's really going on here? Am I jumping to a conclusion too fast? Am I missing key info? On top of that, they use intellectual standards, things like clarity, accuracy, relevance, logic, and fairness. So before you accept an idea or make a call, you ask, is this clear? Does it make sense? Is it fair? This 1-2 punch, elements plus standards, makes your thinking more solid and less emotional. Now let's get into some tools you can actually use today. There's 5, W2H, who, what, where, when, why, how, and how much. And this is great when you're trying to break down a messy situation. Let's say your business is losing customers. You'd ask, who's leaving? What changed? When did it start? Why might it be happening? It gives structure to chaos. Next is SCQH, situation, complication, question, hypothesis. This helps when you're stuck or trying to explain a complex issue. You lay out the facts, identify what's not working, ask the key question, and then offer a possible solution. It's clear and gets people aligned fast. Then we've got the MECE principle, mutually exclusive, collectively exhaustive. Fancy words, but simple idea. When breaking down a problem, make sure you're not overlapping, mutually exclusive, and not leaving gaps, collectively exhaustive. It keeps your analysis clean and tight. Lastly, decision trees. This is a visual tool. You lay out options and the possible outcomes that follow each one. It's perfect for making choices when there are multiple paths like hiring, investing, or launching a product. You see the consequences before you act. These tools don't make your decisions for you, but they force you to think clearly, ask better questions, and avoid knee-jerk moves. Use them often enough, and they'll become second nature. But let's be real, we all get fooled sometimes, not because we're dumb, but because our brains love shortcuts. And those shortcuts often come in the form of fallacies and biases. If you don't spot them, they'll mess with your decisions without you even knowing it. There are with logical fallacies. These are errors in reasoning that seem convincing but fall apart when you look closer. First, the straw man fallacy. That's when someone twists your argument into something easier to attack. You say, I think we should review our marketing plan. And someone replies, so you're saying our whole team is doing a terrible job? That's not what you said. But now you're stuck defending yourself instead of your point. Then there's the bandwagon fallacy. Everyone's doing it. Doesn't make something right. Trends don't equal truth. Just because a product has 1 million reviews doesn't mean it's the best. Popular isn't the same as correct. False dilemma is another trap. It's when you're given only 2 choices when more exist. Like either you support this policy or you don't care about people. Real life is rarely black and white. Don't let someone back you into a corner like that. Slothful induction is when someone ignores clear patterns and says it's just bad luck. Like if a project fails 3 times under the same manager, but no one wants to admit it might be a leadership issue, we overlook the obvious. Now on to cognitive biases. These are mental habits that quietly shape your thinking. Confirmation bias is the big one. We all tend to look for info that supports what we already believe and ignore anything that doesn't. It's like Googling why my idea is great instead of could my idea fail. Then there's the Dunning-Kruger effect, that overconfident feeling you get when you don't know enough to realize how much you don't know. You see it when someone just watched one video and suddenly thinks they're an expert. Anchoring bias happens when you rely too much on the first thing you hear. If the first price you see for a car is $30,000, 0 cents, anything under that feels like a deal, even if it's not. And the availability heuristic makes you overestimate things just because they come to mind quickly, like fearing plane crashes more than car accidents, even though the latter is far more common. Here's the key. Spot the trick before it hijacks your brain. Once you name it, you're less likely to fall for it. Let's talk about 2 ways your brain connects the dots: inductive and deductive reasoning. They sound fancy, but they're really just 2 styles of thinking: bottom up and top down. Inductive reasoning starts with small pieces, things you've noticed, and builds up to a general idea. It's like stacking bricks until you have a full picture. You see a few patterns and come up with a broader conclusion. Here's an example. All the chairs in my house are red, so all chairs must be red. Now, obviously, that conclusion isn't true everywhere, but it feels logical based on your personal experience. That's how inductive reasoning works. You observe something, recognize a pattern, and draw a general idea from it. It's useful when you're exploring, brainstorming, or making sense of things without all the facts yet. Now, flip it. Deductive reasoning goes the other way. You start with a big idea or rule and apply it to a specific situation. Example, oh, dogs are friendly. My neighbor's pet is a dog, so my neighbor's pet must be friendly. That's top-down thinking. You begin with a known rule and follow it down to a conclusion. It's neat and tidy. If the starting point is true, the conclusion should be too. So how do these play out in real life? Say you're working on a product design. Inductive reasoning might be collecting user feedback. 5 customers said this feature confused them. Maybe we need to redesign that part. You start with data, then look at the bigger picture. But if you're solving a technical issue, You might use deductive reasoning. The system only fails when this component is active, so the problem must be linked to that module. You start with what you know, then test specifics. In research, both are powerful. Inductive thinking helps form a hypothesis when you're discovering something new. Deductive reasoning helps test that hypothesis to see if it holds up. The real power comes from knowing when to use each. Inductive is great for exploring ideas and finding patterns. Deductive is best when you need solid conclusions based on known rules. So next time you're solving a problem or making a call, ask yourself, am I building up or breaking down? Good thinkers aren't born, they're built. They train their minds the same way athletes train their bodies. It's not about IQ, it's about habits. And the best critical thinkers tend to share a few key ones. First, they question assumptions. They don't take things at face value. Just because something's always been done this way doesn't mean it's right. They ask, what if that's not true anymore? Or what are we missing? That kind of thinking uncovers new paths others overlook. Second, they know how to delay judgment. Instead of reacting right away, they pause, they sit with the question, they gather more info, they let ideas breathe. That split-second delay often makes all the difference between a smart move and a rash one. They also embrace feedback, even when it stings. They don't get defensive. They ask, is there truth in this? They want to improve more than they want to be right. That kind of openness builds resilience and trust. Another powerful habit, self-reflection. They don't just think, they think about their thinking. They review past decisions, ask what they could have done better, and adjust. They don't see mistakes as failures, they see them as data. The people who think clearly tend to carry a special kind of energy. They're confident, but not loud about it. They trust their process, but they're also humble enough to change their mind when the facts shift. That balance is rare and powerful. They're informed, but still curious. Even when they know a lot, they keep asking questions, not to challenge others, but to keep learning. They don't pretend to have all the answers. They just keep searching for better ones. Here's the best part. These habits aren't fixed traits. You don't have to be born this way. You built them. One question, one pause, one reflection at a time. So if you've ever thought, I'm just not a deep thinker, that's not true. You just haven't practiced enough yet. Every time you slow down, ask a better question, or rethink your own belief, that's you sharpening your mind. And the more you do it, the more natural it becomes. All right, let's bring it home. We've covered a lot in the last half hour, how to think deeper, question more, and recognize the traps that quietly shape our decisions. We talked about fallacies that twist logic, biases that cloud judgment, and the everyday habits that help you cut through the noise. One big takeaway, you don't need to have all the answers. You just need to ask better questions. Whether you're trying to solve a problem at work, make sense of the news, or figure out your next move in life, it pays to slow down, step back, and actually think before reacting. We looked at real tools too, like the Paul Elder model, 5W2H, MECE, and decision trees. These aren't just academic concepts. They're practical ways to break down complexity and make smarter, more confident calls. We also talked about how critical thinking isn't about being perfect or cold and logical all the time. It's about balance. You can be thoughtful and still creative, curious and still grounded, confident and still open to being wrong. Speaking of that, here's a quote to hold on to. Being wrong isn't failure, it's the first step to being right. That's the spirit of this whole book. It's not about always getting it right on the first try. It's about building the kind of mind that gets closer with every step. Now I want to hear from you. Which fallacy tripped you up the most? Was it confirmation bias, Dunning-Kruger, the bandwagon effect? Hit the like button if you've ever second guessed a snap decision. You're not alone. We all have. But awareness is power. Subscribe if you want more book breakdowns like this. Practical, honest, and made for minds that want to grow. Thinking clearly is a skill. And like any skill, the more you use it, the sharper it gets. Thanks for sticking with me. Keep thinking, keep questioning. And remember, your brain is your best tool. Use it well.